I grew up in Kenilworth, Illinois, which is in the North Shore of Chicago. And one day when I was in middle school, I was walking along and there was some snow next to the road. And I looked down and there was a CD on the snow, in the snow. And I reached over, picked it up, and it was a John Paul II CD. And in the CD that he recorded in the early 2000s, I believe, there's this set of lyrics that says, "Put out into the deep, do not be satisfied with mediocrity," which is something that has stayed with me, especially as an entrepreneur working in culture, working in the secular world. And I think something that the main problem that I see with the "do not be satisfied with mediocrity" is that a lot of Catholics are satisfied with mediocrity because there is a lot of mediocrity in culture. And I think there would be a response to that saying like, "Oh, that's not fair. Like, we're praying, we're doing all these things." And like, yes, that is true. There is a lot of prayer going on. There's a lot of effort to change culture in Hollywood, which is great. But I don't see as much of that effort being active in Silicon Valley, in Wall Street, in tech, in media, in the boardroom, at the highest levels where policies are being made for all of society, all of the country. And I think that's where the problem is. And I think that's where we really need to change and focus as Catholics, is that there are these voids in culture that can be solved if there were enough Catholics involved in these spaces. And I think that, we have a clear example. It doesn't always have to be, which I think why there's been such a big push towards like fixing Hollywood is because Fulton Sheen, for example, we all know Fulton Sheen, and we all know that he was very popular in Hollywood, and even non-Catholics knew who he was. And there's a video you can look up on YouTube where he's on a game show, and this presumably non-Catholic woman, is on this game show, like, "Who's my guest?" or "Who's this next guest?" And so they're describing Fulton Sheen, and then she gets it, like, "Oh, Fulton Sheen," and he stands up and hugs her. And so there was a time in our culture where, in Hollywood culture specifically, where there was a higher level of like morals. So it is possible, but like there's other parts, and it's interesting because there are a lot of Catholic business people. There's definitely Catholics in business that we see Legatus, and that's an amazing, organization, but there's not a lot of, I would say, magnetic Catholics in these spaces. I myself live in Los Angeles, and I work with startups all over the country, but I live closest to Silicon Valley, and I have deep roots at Stanford University. And being in those spaces, there are Catholic professors in some of those spaces, and Catholics working in some of those spaces, but I don't really know of any Catholics that have started a venture capital firm and are investing in startups. And if there are, definitely let me know. Love to get in touch with them. But I would say as Catholic, there's this huge void in these places. And the problem is that we complain at parties. We go to these parties as young Catholics or as older Catholics, and we say like, "Oh, Hollywood is immoral. Silicon Valley is bad. Tech startups are bad. Finance is bad. It's bad to make money." All of these things, which are things that are not true. If we were to make more money, then we could influence culture at a higher level and bring things to a higher level of standard, because then we would have the money to control it. But I think it's getting a little off topic. The main point is that there is a void in culture in Silicon Valley and these ecosystems. And an ecosystem is basically a community of entrepreneurs or businesses. And so, I think we have a responsibility as magnetic Catholics to not just be magnetic in our parishes and not just be magnetic and bringing people to the faith in, it's not in like a comfort zone, but really getting out there and becoming involved in secular culture in ways that is not really talked about. So ways that are not really talked about is being involved in boards, being involved, startup advisors, being involved in Wall Street, being active in that and talking about it, and going not just to, Catholic conferences, but going to like TechCrunch Disrupt, going to like Oracle World and talking about like, I'm a business person, but I'm also Catholic, and bringing that up more. So us younger entrepreneurs and people that are trying to be entrepreneurs and fill those voids in culture can be like, "Oh, look, there's a role model that I can aspire to. I'm not the only person out here. I'm not just like the only trailblazer here." And I think there are amazing communities of entrepreneurs out there. Like, for example, the Bush School of Business is doing a great job in bringing up principled entrepreneurs, and there are definitely those pockets, but there's not enough. And I would say the solution to filling a lot of this void in culture, and like where we will see this stop of like complaining at dinner parties and this and that, is where we'll see more active Catholics like in the media, in the boardroom, at the highest levels, like sitting on publicly traded companies, being Catholic, fighting against activist shareholders, fighting against, in a way that is elevating that like level of business ethics. And so I would really challenge those of you who are in this conference, to be, to pray, definitely go to mass, be involved in your parish and your community, but really seek to be the solution in culture, in secular culture. It's important to be, not of the world, but be in the world, because there's a lot of, people that we need to inspire and bring to these higher levels. And I think we need to be involved in media and tech and finance, and to make a lot of money, not for the sake of making money. I do not mean that at all, but to serve humanity and to be a servant leader. We don't have enough of those. We don't have enough of those talking about it to the extent that everybody would know somebody's name. I mean, I think a really good example of where it's strong is in real estate. There's a lot of like Catholic billionaires who are in real estate, which is amazing. But then you don't really see those like in tech and like in other places where there should be. So I would say my challenge to those of you watching this would, if you have like this desire and you're really thinking like, oh, this is something that I would like to be involved in, that would be God placing that desire in your heart, and like allow yourself to dream and allow yourself to participate in those thoughts. And like, how can this be possible? How can I change culture? And I would say you need to be involved in the secular culture and be involved in a way that people are drawn to you and be like, what is this? Who is this person? I need to be like them. And then just kind of like take it from there. So if you, have questions about being in venture capital, or what does that mean, or startups, seek out people who are Catholic in those spaces, but then also aspire to be that person who's going to lead the way in changing culture and essentially fill up that void. So that's pretty much it. And I really hope that there's more inspiration and more hope in people who are watching this to really fill those voids. And we need more young entrepreneurs who are Catholic, who work in these spaces, who can then lead the way for other entrepreneurs. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.